And welcome back. We've been talking about lying to your kids. Is it okay to do that? And the kinds of conversations that you can have with them. And it brings to mind politics. That's another thing that has been in the news, well, since the beginning of time, but particularly in the last year or so.
Yeah, and the rhetoric is so heated right now that I certainly want to protect my daughter if we're in the car and the radio's on. Sometimes I'm like, let's just turn that down.
Right.
So I don't know. We actually wanted to bring Dr. Mead with Swedish Medical Center back in on this question about politics and anxiety. I mean, it certainly gives me a lot of heartburn.
Yeah.
I am kind of worried about my 3-year-old daughter being exposed to a lot of this stuff. What are the risks?
There's a lot going on. And I think even little kids who don't maybe understand the words that are being said, they're very, very susceptible to the tone in people's voices and the emotion that they feel. So even if they're hearing things on TV or radio and they don't really understand it, they can tell people are upset. And that can certainly create anxiety and kind of negative feelings in kids.
I wonder how it's possible as a parent to fully be aware of what your child is interpreting and absorbing. Because I was just this morning, someone on Facebook posted that their kid said something to them in the car and they had no idea they even knew what that term was. It was some political term and they ended up turning the channel over it. But then this parent was like, I don't know how long she's been wondering about this term because she didn't come to me. So how do you navigate that?
You ask your kids. I mean, I think this is the best thing no matter what age they are. You can ask them, what do you know about what's going on? Do you have any concerns? Are you worried about anything? What's really good that's happening in the world? Because we want to balance that out, right? So if they say, I think that everyone hates each other and this is a terrible time, then I think it's really good to counter that with telling them stories and good things that are happening in other places too.
So before the break, we asked you about when it's okay to lie to your kids, and you basically said there's not a good time, really, truthfully. So what about in politics? I mean, is there something here that, like, how much protection of our kids and how much transparency?
You know, again, I think like we talked about before, if you're telling your kids things to make them feel safe, that's pretty much always okay. So I think the more that you can make them feel reassured and say to them, like, you know, we're still a family unit, we love each other, we're going to be fine. Those are good messages to give to your kids. I think the most important thing you can do, especially for younger kids, is really to try to shield them as much as possible. So don't have the news on in the background, don't have the radio on to the news station in the car if they're there. Try to protect them as much as you can. There's still going to be things that filter in, but I think not inundating kids with these negative messages is really key to kind of preventing the issue in the first place.
I think another interesting aspect of this is that kids, as they get older, are trying to form their own opinions and their own beliefs about things. And I know that parents have told me it's really tough to navigate. When do you help guide them versus stepping back? When it comes to politics, should you be discussing with your kids what your own personal politics are? And this is what we believe as a family. Or are you trying to initiate a conversation that asks the child for their opinion first?
I think with older kids, it's great to ask for their opinion first. And there may be times when you and your kids don't agree. There probably will be times when you don't agree, right? And so to take that in stride and just ask them to explain why they feel a certain way or what information they've heard or where are they getting this evidence. It's really different, I think, to say this is what I believe as a person and now tell me what you believe than to say this is what we believe as a family. Because you want your kids to feel free to have their own beliefs and develop their own belief systems. You want them to have the same values that you have, right? And you want to instill that in them. But I think allowing them some room to sort of grow their own opinions is also really important.
Which leads me to my question. In my house growing up, we had pretty loud and vociferous debates.
We did too.
I mean, like, you know, honestly, to be truthful, it was my dad and my sister and I, but my mom would get very worried that we didn't like each other. So how do you have a healthy debate, or is that healthy, I guess?
I think it's healthy as long as all the parties involved are respectful of each other. And this is really the key in any relationship, in any discussion. We have really heated debates in my family too. We all kind of believe the same thing, but we still like to debate the nuances of it. And it's good. I think it's good conversation. It makes us all more aware and better people. But I think the bottom line, again, is to treat the other person with respect, even if you don't agree with them. And if you start at that foundation, you're usually going to be okay.
I think what was difficult in my family about that is that we would open it up for conversation, and then as I got older, I could tell my parents had a difficult time knowing, because in the moment of debate, you're debating as equals. Even though they're my parent, I'm their daughter. But there comes a time where they had to make that switch and go back to being my parent again. You know, like that, you can't talk that way to me. So how do you know when to make that switch? Because that could be really tough. That's a really tough one to navigate.
Again, I think that separation of values and politics is great. So, you know, family values that you have, we don't swear at the dinner table or whatever it is. It's okay to lay down those ground rules, but I think allowing people to have opinions is also important.
I love all of this. I think you've been really helpful. Thank you for kind of helping ease the pit in my stomach.
Yes, thank you so much.
About politics in general. We do appreciate it, Dr.
No
Mead.
problem.
Thank you very much.